Thank you. Again, my name is Teague Good Voice, Teague Westwolf Good Voice. Amskapi Pakani Blackfeet from Browning, Montana, of the Nitsitapi, the Blackfoot Confederacy. And I'm a musician, I'm an actor, and I'm a grass dancer. And I do have an album, which you can purchase on my website, teaguegoodvoice.com. Thank you. Have a good night. And remember, the Blackfeet, we don't have a word for goodbye. We say Gadakadamatsin until we meet again.
Hey, everybody hear me? How about a big round of applause for T. Good Voice, huh? Isn't he amazing? Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Celebration of the Grizzly and the Missoula premiere of Save the Yellowstone Grizzly's new film, The Return of the Grizzly. There's a lot of grizzlies in that sentence, but hey, thanks, everyone. We are at full capacity, so give yourselves a round of applause. I knew Missoula just would turn up because, you know, Missoula loves grizzlies, so. My name's Chuck Irestone. I'm your host tonight, and I helped start Save the Yellowstone Grizzly and ran it for a couple years, and now I'm helping coordinate the road shows. And tonight we're going to have a couple guest speakers, and then Rick Bass will introduce the film. And then after the film, we'll do a Q&A, and then we're going to roll into a little intermission, and after the intermission, we're going to do the raffle, and then we are going to have music by Flash Panda, and that's going to incorporate this beautiful old growth guitar that Rick Bass brought down from the Yak as part of the Montana project. Let's see. Oh, first I need to let you know that this event is being videotaped by the Missoula Community Access Television as part of the Media Assistance Grants Program. So thanks to Ron, Joel, and MCAT for all you do in the community. And I'd like to acknowledge that this event is taking place on the ancestral lands of the Salish, Kootenai, and Pend Oreille, and that many surrounding tribes use the land, including the Cayuse, Walla Walla, Nez Perce, Ketu Naha, Blackfeet, and Shoshone. And Save the Yellowstone Grizzly believes that indigenous wisdom should lead the way in the Grizzly Bear's recovery effort. So we only have one house cleaning rule tonight, and that is to not put away your phones. Please take them out, take photos, take pictures of these beautiful bears by Tom Mangelson, and then the beautiful projections, and then let's blast it out on the internet using hashtag Save the Grizz and Return of the Grizzly and For the Love of Grizzlies. All right, you guys got to bear with me, pun intended, while I run through these important thank yous, because we got quite a few. Thanks to the Wilma and Logjab for having us, and also thanks to the Sierra Club for sponsoring the films. They've been awesome, especially Nick Gavock, and he's been touring it around the Rocky Mountain West. And congratulations, and Bonnie has also been a big part of that, and congrats to Bonnie on her retirement coming up. They're hosting shows in Helena this Monday, February 5th, and in Jackson Hole the next day on February 6th. And special thanks for Patagonia's for sponsoring the film and all they've done for us. And Beth Sullivan is here. She's making those awesome T-shirts that say "Hey Duke Lives" and "Return to the Grizzly." So be sure to grab one of those. For a $20 donation, you can get one of those. Special thanks to our projection artists. This projection is part of Animal Land, it's called. And it's the work of Knoxville, Tennessee political artist Lauren Strohawker, environmental artist Kendra Solers. And we discovered these projections in Livingston, and then they worked with us to put this together tonight. And the projection's a collaboration with the Missoula Art Museum. And thanks to the Art Museum and to Wardens for letting us project on the walls over the last couple weeks. And thanks to the Trail 1033 for having Rick Bass on today. He was on the lunchbox. And thanks to Tim Shawn at Imagination Brewing for making that tasty Return of the Pale Ale that's served here tonight. And then we have, thanks to Flash Panda and T. Good Voice for the music. And then we have thanks to Pete Davies for his handmade bear cards he has for sale up there. And you can get CDs from Teague, and they're available up at his stand next to the merchandise booth. And thanks to all our co-hosts and tabling partners that you see rotating on the screen, please stop by the booths and get involved. And thanks to everyone to help put the word out around Missoula for this great turnout. I really appreciate it. And thanks to Michelle Richaud and Mel Owens for going above and beyond the call of duty tonight. I just want to tell you real quickly a little bit about Save the Yellowstone Grizzly. Save the Yellowstone Grizzly fights for the safety and welfare of all grizzly bears south of Canada. And in 2016, the federal government wanted to remove the bear from the endangered species list, and this spurred our founder, Doug Peacock, into action, also known as Hayduke. And for those of you that don't know, Edward Abbey modeled Hayduke after Doug in his famous book, The Monkey Wrench Gang. So the delisting spurred Doug into action, along with the fact that the federal government wasn't recognizing that climate change was having an effect on the grizzly bears. And so with our beautiful day outside today, we all know that that's not true. These days we have three main projects. One of them is an underpass that's just east of Livingston on I-90 at Mission Creek. And this is going to get bears from the Absarokas under the highway over to the Crazies and onto the Northern Continental Divide. And then we put up some anti-delisting billboards around the Yellowstone region, and we have them on I-90 and south of Livingston, and this was in response to some pro-delisting billboards, so we have a little bit of billboard wars going on over there. And then lastly, we have our films. We have this new film, and then we have The Beast of Our Time, Climate Change and Grizzly Bears that came out during COVID, and you can find that on our website and on YouTube. So how many people here have seen a grizzly bear? Wow, awesome. Isn't it amazing how that experience is like etched in your memory? That the grizzly bear really has that ability to make that encounter just stick with us. So tonight, for the love of grizzlies, we are asking each and every one of you to get involved locally by being involved in Bear Smart initiatives in your community. As Yvonne Senard says in the film, if all of us thought about protecting our local areas, it would change things a lot. And on a state and national level, the grizzly needs your help too. Unfortunately, right now, the states of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming want to remove the bear from the endangered species list and have a trophy hunt. And that final decision on that could be coming as early as a week or so. Boo. And we also want to mention that the U.S. Fish Wildlife Service has opened a public comment scoping period to consider options for restoring grizzlies in the Bitterroots, and those comments are due on March 18th. So once again, we were asking you to become a voice for the bear tonight. Please visit one of our tabling partners, make a donation, buy a t-shirt, drink a beer, sign the petition, get a raffle ticket, and write your politicians, and then you can also sign up for our newsletter and by texting GRIZ to 66866. So please get involved in a way that inspires you. It's going to take all of us working together to save the grizzly. All right, now for our guests. You bet. Thank you. Our first guest speaker is James Holt Sr., and he and his family drove all the way from Lapway, Idaho to be here tonight. And James is a member of the Nez Perce tribe, also known as the Nimipu, and he is a two-term member of the Nez Perce Tribal Fish and Wildlife Commission. He's also a board member of the International Wildlife Coexistence Network, a film participant, and the executive director of the Buffalo Field Campaign. Tonight, James is going to share a bear story and give us an update on a new piece of tribal-led legislation called the Trinity Act, also known as the Tribal Heritage and American Bison, Grizzly Bear, and Wolf Restoration and Coexistence Act. Please welcome to the stage, James Holt.
Tots Kalawat Oikalo. Good evening, everybody. As he said, my name is James Holt. I'm from Lapway, Idaho, in the Nez Perce tribe, and it's an honor to be here tonight It's an honor to be a part of this grizzly bear journey in any way. My clan, we come from the Grizzly Bear Claw clan. My brother, he carries the name Hiyum Tamalukt, the next grizzly bear in line. So, we have a strong affinity to the grizzly bear as a family, as a clan, and as a tribe as a whole. So, a lot of that guides us in our philosophies with land management today. We often talk about ridgetop to ridgetop management, ecosystem-wide, speaking for the biodiversity as much as we do in individual species, utilizing those keystone species as a way to provide for all of those that live on the land or near the waters. And that's very important to us. And that's why one day I was lamenting to a friend of mine, why don't we do more? Tribes should have a little bit more say in what happens throughout their homelands. Right now they're harnessed by red tape. They're harnessed by obstacles that are in their way to co-management. And my friend jotted everything I said down. And a week later, 2 weeks later, she's starting this new forum up. And I didn't know what it was about. And she called me and she said, we're starting this thing. And you started it. And I was like, I didn't start nothing. Yeah, you did. You started it that day you flew off the handle about this stuff. And, lo and behold, when a lot of impassioned people come together, we can create something great. And that Trinity Act that was referenced is a step in that direction. Tribes, their capacity has elevated. Their ability to co-manage and look after species, the proof is there in the pudding now. The Nez Perces, we've restored wolves, to the northwest, whether you like it or not, whatever side of the fence you're on, we have that debate to have now that the wolf is back. And they're facing the same trials as the grizzly bears today. The same landscapes, the same places, the same areas that they need each other to complement each other's existence. We're fighting for those places today. And so this Trinity Act is a great opportunity for tribes themselves to step up to the plate, to enact more of these philosophies that we've gained since time immemorial, since eons ago when we were put here on this landscape. And there are people that are in our way, people that have impeded progress. Some of these landscapes, they need our help. The degradation is growing. We've all wake up to it. I don't know how things are over here in Missoula, but over in Nez Perce country, we've had it tough, weird. On January 11th, we broke a record for the new low for Lapway, and it was 13 below. And I know it gets a lot colder than that over here, but it doesn't there. And it was that cold. 2 weeks later, we're breaking a record for the warmest day on January 21st with 64 degrees. Extreme weather, the animals, the plants, the snowpack. I don't know if you've been watching that snowpack, but you can't miss it. You go out there and you see the streams, the rivers are running high, months in advance. What does that mean for the water table this summer? I come from the Columbia Basin. We call ourselves a salmon people. These extreme weather events harm salmon. The water leaves faster. The heat comes sooner. The salmon in the middle of the summers, they're boiling down there in that lower Snake, where we're advocating for those lower Snake dams to be breached, similar to the Klamath River. So thank you. So there's a lot of work to be done, in many fronts. And all of this is tied together. Biodiversity, saving something. It's like they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. And that's how I see this for our children. The best time to act for grizzly bears and wolves and buffalo was 20 years ago, but the next best time is right now. And here we are, coming out in great numbers with a wonderful show of support, showing us that grizzly bears matter. You know, we got to continue to tell the state and the federal government what has to happen. And it reminds me of this story that I know that I was told long ago. And it goes something like this. So a long time ago, this man, this woman, their son and their daughter lived next to the stream. Every day, the dad, he would get up and he would go hunting to provide. And it was a day like that when he was gone. And the mother, she says to her children, "Go get me some water at the stream." And they ignored her and they keep playing. She says it again, "Go get me some water down at the stream." And they just ignore her and they keep playing. So finally, on that third time, she gets a little aggravated. She said, "Go over there, get me some water out of that stream, or I'm going to get mad." And they ignore her. "If you don't do what I'm going to say, then I'm going to turn into a bird and fly away." And they ignored her. And she says, "That's it, I'm out of here." So she turns into a raven and she flies away. The boy and the girl, they're home all alone. Soon, Dad comes back and he sees that they're distraught. "Well, what happened?" And the boy, he says, "We were just playing. We were just being disobedient. We weren't listening to Mom, and she turned into a bird and she flew away." And Dad, he gets mad and he says, "Well, if all you are is disobedient kids that don't listen to your mother, then I'm going to go away too." And he turned into a bow and he stood into the corner. And so then the boy and the girl were left alone, sad. And the boy, he says, "I have an idea. We can go to grandfather's house." And so they start going along. Soon they come across Grizzly Bear. Grizzly Bear's walking up the trail. So the boy and the girl, they get off into the side and they hide. But Grizzly Bear has a great smell. She looks, and she finds him. And she puts him in her bag on her hip. And she puts a bunch of needles in that bag so it'll kill anything that goes in the bag. But she puts them in there backwards, and the boy and the girl get in there safely. And so then the Grizzly Bear continues on. And the boy, he's, "I got an idea. I'm going to throw my voice, and then we'll see if there's a chance to get away." So then he says, "Grizzly Bear, your home is on fire. Your children are in there." 2 more times he says this, and Grizzly Bear, she's listening. My children, they're all I have. My husband, he left me. I have to raise my kids on my own." So she runs, and as she goes, the boy and the girl, they start grabbing branches, grass, rocks, anything they could get their hands on, and they put it in the bag. Soon the bag is full, and it's heavy, and Grizzly Bear says, "Oh, I got to hustle. I'll just put it on this branch right here, and I'll come back for it." And she hustles on home. The boy and the girl see their chance, so they get out and they run. They run to the river's edge, and they see a lodge on the other side of the river. "Grandfather, come get us. Grizzly Bear's after us." He say, at that time, Grizzly Bear gets home. She's out of breath, and she sees that her house is fine and her children are fine. "They tricked me." And so she starts running for the spot where she left them. She finds the bag, and she immediately starts looking. Meanwhile, the boy and the girl are at the river. "Grandfather, come and get us. The Grizzly Bear's after us." And the grandfather, he comes out and he says, "Oh? No, you're not my grandchildren. My grandchildren are disobedient. They don't listen to their parents. So the mother turned into a bird and flew away. The dad turned into a weapon and went away. You're not my grandchildren." And the boy says, "But that's us. That's us. We are them." "Oh? Well, come here then." And he takes his leg out and he stretches it all the way across the river. And they run across and jump off. And he says, "Now get into this canoe and hide." And they do that. And just then Grizzly Bear gets to the edge of the river. "You over there, I'm looking for my prey. Did you see them?" And the old man, he looks and he says, "Oh, children? Oh, I ate them. You're not the only one who eats children." And Grizzly Bear says, "You're lying. You're lying. Come get me. I got to go over there and look." And so the old man, he makes this canoe out of grass, and he goes across, and he tells Grizzly Bear, "Here, put these rocks in your braids. I made this canoe out of grass, and it's not steady, so you need you to put rocks in your braids and tuck them in so they don't come out." Okay, so that's what she does. He puts them in there, and they start going. The old man kicks a hole in the bottom of the canoe, and it goes under. Grizzly Bear is too heavy, and she drowns. The old man, he swims over to the shore, and he comes out safely, and the boy and a girl live with their grandfather for the end of their days, and that's the end of that story. And there's very interesting teachings, right? You can imagine what it taught us growing up. 1, 3 times. You tell somebody 3 times. If you exceed that, you're going to offend them. Like, they really mean it when they say it 3 times. But the other part is about the disobedience. I always cracked up about this story because it's eons old, yet it still tells the story of those disobedient teenagers, right? Like, we can't get away from that. It's always been here. But I also kind of liken that boy and that girl to the state and the feds. They're not doing what they say. You know, we're telling them 3 times, we're telling them, do Grizzly Bears right, and they're not listening. But with all of you here tonight, we can use our voices because we're all here together. We're all neighbors. We all have a good voice that we can use. So let's celebrate Grizzly Bears tonight, and let's use our voices. Let's come together. Let's reach across the aisle to those. Let's reach across the tribes and engage them in a good dialogue. Let's do this thing together. So katsiaya for your time tonight and being here for Grizzly Bear. Chachats, we call them, or hiyum. Hiyum is a very ancient name we have for Grizzly Bear. In the old days, we didn't say chachats because that was to invoke his power back before the horse. So we called him by hiyum, and that's just the second name. So thank you all for coming tonight, supporting all these wonderful organizations, and enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Our next guest speaker, bear management specialist for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, Jamie Jonkel, could not make it tonight. Yeah, unfortunately. But he wanted me to tell you that he's just tickled that Missoula is becoming a bear smart community. And he wants everyone to check out the website, missoulabears.org, to get involved. So filling in tonight is an old friend of mine, and you all know her as the new mayor of Missoula, Andrea Davis.
Wow, hi everybody. Sorry. Well, I'm no replacement for Jamie Jonkel, so sorry, I have to read from some notes in order for me to fill in, but thank you for being here. As always, Missoula shows up. It's so good to see everybody here. You show up for important things, you show up for having a good time. We can do both, right? We can have a good time, celebrate, have art and culture, and really talk about science on top of it, which is just fantastic. It's a real honor to be on and share the stage with these amazing people and amazing men. It's incredible. And women. I want to just give a little bit of background about how we got here as a community in terms of passing a resolution to be a bear-safe community. The Missoula Bear Safe Working Group, Bear Smart Working Group, is made up of people from vast different organizations and citizens. So the city of Missoula, the county of Missoula, Missoula Conservation District, Defenders of Wildlife, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, Rattlesnake Watershed Group, Republic Services, and residents around our community who have worked on bear-human conflict issues for about 20 years. The summer of 2022 brought many black bears into right at the heart of the city because it was hot. It was a hot, dry year. The dry weather dried up a lot of the food sources, a lot of the berry crop, and so bears were traveling all over the city, including on the University of Montana campus. The Bear Smart Working Group, which had been in semi-holding phase at that point, took this as a call to action, and Jamie Jonkel, in particular, became worried when grizzly bears began showing up in the North Hills and just east of the city. We here in Missoula were joined by Chris Servheen, who's retired U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service bear biologist, and he and Jamie brought the Bear Smart model to our attention here, and everybody was reconvened. That model offers policies and practices that reduce human-bear conflicts and opportunities for bears to become food conditioned. The goals are protecting public safety by not luring bears into town and protecting bear safety in not offering the chance of becoming human food conditioned, which we know leads to relocation and unfortunately deaths. Not to mention being hit by cars and all sorts of other urban challenges. So with the support of the Missoula mayor and the county commissioners, the working group produced a bear hazard assessment, which showed that 49% of human-bear conflicts in Missoula Valley occur because of unsecured garbage alone. The working group also produced a hazard management plan, which lays out steps we can take towards these goals and reducing, obviously, that conflict. And so garbage was the place to start. In the fall of 2002, those documents in hand, both the county commissioners and the city council adopted resolutions to become a Bear Smart community. Their votes were unanimous. With the leadership of Shannon Thoreau, who's with the Missoula Public Health Department, we wrote a solid waste regulations and developed a science-based new and larger boundary for the bear buffer zone as Missoula City County Health Code regulations. The health board adopted them in August, and the city council and the county commissioners adopted them in the fall. Potomac jumped on board with these regulations as well by resident request. The regulations require bear-resistant garbage cans inside the buffer zone. Rules will be implemented in phases, beginning with Grant Creek and the Rattlesnake April 30th, so a couple months from now. And then Potomac, September 1st, and all other areas through 2025 and 2026. These regulations require haulers to provide bear-resistant containers. And we have had great public support for this effort. Missoulians are aware, right, that we live in wildlife habitat, and we want to live respectfully and safely. And for the sake of people, for the sake of bears, this is something that will improve our community for not only two-leggeds, but for four-leggeds. And it's the least we can do while we live in the beautiful place that we call Montana, and the beautiful place that we call Missoula, to do what we can to keep our amazing, amazing large predators in good health. So thank you so much for being here. Enjoy.
Thank you, Andrea. So as you all know, we had to postpone this event due to our founder, Doug Peacock. He fell and fractured his femur. And I just wanted you to know that he's doing great. He's all healed up. He's in Arizona, and he's out looking for jaguar tracks, like literally. So Hayduke still lives, barely. So Doug wanted me to thank you all for coming, and he also wrote a few words that he wanted me to read to you guys. About 10 months back, workers from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game were ordered to conduct an aerial hunt and kill all the bears and wolves they saw from helicopters. A total of 94 brown bears, including mothers and 11 cubs, 5 black bears, and 5 wolves were fatally shot. If the grizzly is delisted, the states will take over management, and delisting will make trophy hunting a foregone conclusion in Montana. The Alaska massacre teaches us how easily a state can lose bears, I don't think the Yellowstone Grizzly could survive such intense killing. So Doug asks that you take action by emailing the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Martha Williams, and ask her to stop the delisting and trophy hunt. Her email is martha_williams@fws.gov. And we also handed out some take action postcards when you came in. If you wanted to sign those and drop them off at the booth, we'll stick those in the mail for you. So ever since I met Doug at the Patagonia outlet in 1997, I had the good fortune of seeing some of the wildest country with him. We did a 5-day bushwhack through the heart of Glacier and a couple Grizz Search hikes with Larry Campbell in the Selway Bitterroots. And so I've seen the black wolf and the mountain lion and grizzly bears with this man, and we've also laid in the grizzly's day beds. So over the years, people would ask, well, what's it like to go with Doug into the wild? And one of the answers I would tell people is that he walks with a real quiet reverence and listening the whole time. And then the other thing is he doesn't bring any food, like barely any. And he brings this like a handful of sampa, which is a Tibetan staple that Ban Chenard taught him how to make. And then the other thing is that he leaves all his compulsions at home. It's like cold turkey going with Doug, with no food. And then the other answer to this question that I would give to people is that you'd have to read Rick Bass's book, The Lost Grizzlies. And I have a copy of it here. And so Rick wrote this beautiful book about him and Doug looking for the lost grizzlies in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. And so Rick just perfectly captures the essence of what it's like to walk with Doug in the wild. So that makes Rick the perfect person to fill Doug's big shoes tonight. So Rick Bass is the founder of the Yak Valley Forest Council and a board member of Save the Yellowstone Grizzly and the author of over 30 books. He's a tireless activist that's been standing up for the Yak's 20 grizzlies for over 40 years. Most recently, he's organized Climate Aid, the voice of the forest in Portland, Maine, and he'll be bringing Climate Aid to Montana this year. He's the co-founder of the Montana Project. The Montana Project connects small batch makers and crafters with the proposed climate refuge in the Yak. And part of that project is that Rick took the 315-year-old spruce tree that was destroyed by a logging road and made this guitar out of it, wherever it was. Someone stole the guitar. Oh well. So that guitar sings the sound of the ancient forest, and Flash Panda is going to be highlighting that tonight. So normally, I would say welcome Rick to the stage with a big round of applause, but in honor of Doug and the wild and grizzly bears and everything we love so much, how about we welcome him to the stage with a big howl? Ow!
You guys are scaring me. Thanks, Chuck, and Save the Yellowstone Grizzly, bringing the film here by Micah. Teague and James, thank you. Andrea, thank you. If we say all the thank yous for everybody being here, we'll run out of time. Thank you, Dan Sullivan, the heart and soul of Save the Yellowstone Grizzly. And if y'all on your, God, what a rude host we are. I'm already talking about when y'all leave. On your way out, if you'll go by these booths where people are grinding for these small NGOs that are working to fight grizzlies, organizations that are 5, 6, 7 employees fighting, the 35,000 member Forest Service or the 278,000 member Department of Interior. And, what we're doing here in Montana is historic and matters. We think of nations as places bounded and bordered by, say, a river or a mountain range, or even an arbitrary transect of meets and bounds, a territory. But a nation is comprised also of tenuous strands and threads of time. We in Montana know what the shape of our state is by our physical places, the names of rivers, valleys, mountain ranges. But of the invisible currents of time that ventilate our existence it is harder to find a bearing. I believe that time, measured by the 4 seasons, becomes damaged when the land becomes damaged. A conundrum we grapple with as a state. How do we become aware not just of what a grizzly is and what it needs to be bear aware, but also of how to accommodate and empower their passage across this land that, like the grizzlies, we love? For if you are here to celebrate them tonight, you understand. We need them more than we ever have. We need them sleeping like seeds beneath the snow in winter, and we need to see their tracks above ground in the other seasons. Sometimes we need to see the actual bears themselves, to know they are not myths and echoes and dusty traces of what once was. As our dear friend Lynn Seuss of Vital Ground says, where the grizzly walks, all things prosper. And we are not prospering. We are burning, and they are burning. They seek refuge, but there is not enough refuge. Whether whitebark pine in Yellowstone or huckleberries in the Yak, they are not prospering. No offense to Colorado or any other state, but without a healthy, vibrant, connected population of grizzlies, we become, well, like Colorado or any other state. Their needs are enormous, but not so complicated. They need the 4 seasons, maybe even more than we do. The safety of all grizzlies south of Canada exists now due to the wisdom of a federal court that asked of our state and federal governments and the Safari Club International one question. If you allow the hunting of grizzlies when they leave Yellowstone, if you shoot them, how are they going to get to the cabinets and the yak? They're not, are they? Twice the court asked this hard question, which the state and feds and SCI could not answer. Don't come back, the court warned, until Montana's isolated populations are connected. With a spectacular failure of imagination and colossal disrespect, the state of Montana is now playing a shell game with our grizzlies, trapping those who have no interest in being trapped and driving them from one end of the state to another, hoping that's what the court meant by connectivity. A bastardized Lonely Hearts Uber monorail system in which the deportees face dramatically higher rates of mortality. Still another form of taking that the state has evidently decided they will deal with in yet another court at another time. More questions that we here tonight must answer. No one else is. No one else will. We must come up with solutions. Killing them is not a solution, nor is an interstate trucking system. What does our state become when grizzlies are no longer safe and secure where they live, and yet are no longer safe to roam their mountains and valleys, the river bottoms and rumpled hills? What happens to us and our state and our grizzlies when the ice is gone and the rivers dry? When time itself stops, stranded in eternal high summer and eternal burning? Those prophets who, peering from a geological perspective but a short distance ahead, foresaw an apocalypse of fire, I do not believe they were speaking in metaphor. They saw what they saw. We cannot stop the burning in our lifetime, nor in our children's, nor our children's children's. We cannot even stop it here in the green garden of Montana. But we can act with dignity and grace under pressure, what some have defined as courage. We can slow the rate of burning, and with our gestures, the seeds of ideas which become actions. We can ease the way, the passage by all of us into that burning future, this burning future. How we treat our grizzlies, the imagination and respect with which we treat them as well as each other, will describe the future of the state of Montana. Bears are not rainbow trout to be raised in a hatchery before being dumped in a lake. They are the original architects of our wildness. They are the original architects of this place we profess to love. The wild country of Yellowstone and the yak beckons, as does that of the bitterroots and the bear paws. Our geographic space is still with us in Montana, but now it feels as if time has stopped. The time is not now. The time was yesterday. We are stranded in the moment. Never before have we been where we are now. We must find a way to move forward without a map. We must find our way forward into and through the flames. We must make our own maps in Montana and our own dreams. We must lead the way forward into the shade and cool waters that grizzlies and other sensitive species, such as ourselves, require. A land and a time they and we once inhabited and can yet again. A place and a time called Montana. The name Montana still means something. How much does it still mean? That is up to us, only us. We all dream of them at various times. I've often wondered, do they dream of us? They go to sleep, they wake up. The seasons keep turning. Who would want to kill them? Who? Who would want to break the workings of time itself? We're the luckiest people on earth. We have grizzlies, and they are going to wake up at least one more time.
We're just going to snap a photo, and then we're going to roll the film.
A long time ago, Coyote, he told Grizzly Bear that the human beings were coming and that we were going to share his home with them. Grizzly Bear was angry. He came across a young boy who was lost. Grizzly Bear was amazed and intrigued by the young boy. So he took him and he showed him how to live on the land. He showed him the roots, the berries, the plants. He showed him how to mark the trail to buffalo country for the Nez Perces. So he showed us a lot of how to live when we first began to populate our homeland. For those reasons, we really have a strong affinity to the grizzly bear and wished that he would come home to us. It's unfortunate that Grizzly Bear has to prove his worth on the land. I hope that the people can understand that they can take action, they can let their voices be known, to step forward and say that they want grizzlies and wolves on the landscape to help care for the land, to help give something for the generations to come.
The fate of the grizzly bear is in our hands. If the grizzly is to survive, we need to learn to live together. This challenge has been accepted by those of us who believe that there is ever more to be learned from the wild. Friends Doug Peacock and Michael Hausman understand this may be our last best chance.
I was there living alone back in the woods of Yellowstone long enough to realize that the bears themselves were having trouble. They were the lowest their population had ever been. And that's when somebody gave me an old 16mm movie camera, and I decided I was going to assemble kind of an ethnographic film of the surviving grizzlies.
What attracted you to grizzly bears, having been a combat veteran?
Well, first of all, the Tet Offensive burned me out. I saw hundreds and hundreds of dead children. So when I got back here, I was no good around people. I couldn't even go see my parents. The only place I wanted to be was where I've always been comfortable, and that's the wilderness. I kept a little map in Vietnam is just a little road map of the Northern Rockies, and I'd look at it every night and look at the blank spots on the map. Said, you know, if I ever get out of here, I'm going to go there. And that's what I did. And I came down with a malaria attack and ended up in Yellowstone in the middle of a hallucinatory, what they call a paroxysm of malaria with a high temperature. I thought I was imagining grizzly bears. Turned out they were real. And there I was, and I never got over it. Never got over it. You know, they allowed me to externalize my own darker thoughts and experiences, and you know, connect in a real way with the world again.
Part of keeping the wilderness as you knew it is to protect the grizzlies, and that's what we got to do. Now we have a friendship about buffalo.
We sure do.
I have this house in Montana for 40 years. I decided to return the buffalo who were here way before we were.
Way before. Yeah.
And then you, on your side, decided to return the grizzlies. In contrast to a lot of my neighbors who don't understand the role of the grizzly in American history, would track one down and probably try and shoot it, and they have. I'm perfectly happy having them live in coexistence, and if on occasion something would happen to one of my buffalo, I can understand.
This is not a rational hatred. I think that modern humans fear what they don't know, and increasingly we know nothing of the lives of wild, rare animals like wolves and jaguars and bison. And the more you know about a creature, the less you fear it, because what we fear, we really do hate.
You told me that the grizzlies, they move. They have to find a new place to go. So we have to let that happen.
Until we reconnect that isolated ecosystem with grizzly bears up here, you know, they don't have a chance of long-time survival. They will go extinct.
We are at a time where every question needs to be opened and turned inside out. We don't know what our future will be. We know what our past is. We know that bears have walked alongside humans from the beginning. So why would we risk that? Why not err on precaution rather than arrogance? And the delisting the grizzly feels like an act of arrogance.
The intent of the law is to preserve our precious wilderness forever, protected by the presence of grizzlies, wolves, and buffalo. Removing the grizzlies from the endangered species list means trophy hunting. In other words, we have saved them in order to kill them.
Doctor, thank you for appearing today. Grizzly bears, you testified to, once roamed in huge numbers across the western United States, certainly in my home state of Colorado, but due to hunting and habitat destruction, they've been completely wiped out. In all of the lower 48 states, there are only roughly 1,500 grizzly bears left. In your expert scientific opinion, are those numbers high enough to remove protections for the grizzly bear?
My opinion would be, backed by the science, is that grizzly bears exist in less than 3% of their original numbers. And if grizzlies are to survive as a species, genetically, there has to be connectedness between the populations of bears.
Thank you, Doctor, and I would certainly agree with you. My understanding that British Columbia, just by way of example, has 20 times as many grizzlies as the state of Wyoming. And British Columbia, just last year, I believe, decided to end the practice of trophy hunting.
If you can believe it, within 2 days of seeing my first grizzly bear, I was mauled almost to death. For some reason, I decided I'd continue on with bears. The term explorer bear, I believe I invented it, but I was trying to get the idea that bears that leave a population of bears and sometimes go long distances are exploring for new territory for themselves. So I think what we're seeing with the explorer there is an attempt to find new habitat, partly because they're food stressed. They're not successful at finding food. They haven't even got a territory where they can learn all the postal routes to get the seasonal foods. They're the ones that get into cat food and bird feeders and horse chow and all these sorts of things, or garbage that people leave out. So the message there for people in wild country, especially in places like Montana, we have to secure our garbage and any foods. You've got to adjust your behavior to fit the local environment. We have to come up with some management initiatives that look after those explorer bears, because they're very important genetically and for other reasons, because they're the ones that are going to connect our disparate populations that we have now and fill in the wilderness in other areas. I mean, that's the most positive thing you can do. Protected habitat and having a decent, humane attitude toward our wilderness symbol, the grizzly bear.
What about the adventurous bears who wander out? How do you make an asset out of the bear that leaves the park, goes someplace else? Why should that bear be acutely endangered from being put to death by various forces outside of the park? Without grizzly bears, the entire region becomes a different place. It would be a sign that the Northern Rockies was not the wild place it used to be. If you could face the idea of killing grizzlies or removing grizzlies, I think that would have a sort of a cascade for every other wild thing. It would say something about the place itself to lose any of these iconic animals. It's not a world that I'd really want to live in very much. If we were missing sandhill cranes or we were missing goshawks, all these kinds of things that seem to stand for the place because they've co-evolved for such a long time. And the idea that we had the capacity to sort of terminate their presence would say something about us as a sort of suicidal people.
Millie gambled, bringing her cubs through the brightening world towards a house on the edge of the woods. There she found a garden of ursine delights, with elk hides hung out to dry and overstuffed garbage cans. Millie turned to the work of feeding, eating all that she could. Engrossed, she did not notice the house's screen door opening. She did not see the long barrel of a 12-gauge shotgun in the dim light.
Millie ended up in the field, and she ended up having to be put down because of getting into conflict with people and being shot in the face with a shotgun. It's so easy to look at population numbers or look at, this idea of range expansion, right? Bears returning to places where they've been absent for a while. Every bear that shows up on a trail camera, every bear that you see at the edge of the forest, as the night's coming up, that bear has essentially performed a series of heroic feats to stay alive until the moment when you see it or encounter it. And that, for me, is what Millie's story really makes clear. She knew where every single crop, wild or domestic, was ripening, and she moved through the Mission Valley with a stealth and a grace that is truly awe-inspiring. And she avoided so many of the temptations that were there, chickens that were left out, garbage that's unsecured, all that stuff. And yet she came to a bad end because she finally ran afoul of somebody who had no patience for bears. But where we are today, we're standing on Thunder Road Farm. We raise cattle and raspberries. We're doing agriculture at a small or medium scale, but we're doing it next to a truly wild place. We do several things that could cause problems with bears. We keep chickens for our own eggs, and we grow fruit. We protect all of those things with electric fence. And we maintain that electric fence, and we make sure that it's really hot and that it's designed to the best practices as we understand them for deterring bears. We also secure our garbage. We use a bear-resistant bin, and we're just generally watchful in terms of how and where we're grazing our animals. And so far that's worked really well for us. But I think overall, we have a chance to do something truly amazing here in terms of remembering, right? Not discovering, but remembering and relearning how to share this landscape.
Protecting the grizzly is going to take more effort than ever. Solutions to save wildlife and wild places are advancing right under our noses. Working Dogs for Conservation is an international group with grassroots ties. They are training rescue dogs to get the science that we need in the field as grizzlies navigate the wildland and urban interface.
This organization was founded because they wanted to develop techniques that would make it easier to determine populations in a less invasive way. So we don't have to actually touch the animal to get the results that we're looking for. We're doing two things. We're trying to find scat along critical crossings so that we can determine how many bears are crossing in the specific areas to reduce highway collision. The other project we're working on is determining population sizes in Missoula, so more urban. And one of the biggest issues with bears being killed is human conflicts.
I'm very excited about Working Dogs for Conservation and the ability for the dogs to detect bear scats. If we could go into, let's say, an important wildlife linkage zone, and we're needing to acquire data on the number of bears crossing between point A and point B, I could walk that whole stretch and maybe find 2 or 3 scats. The dogs could find 10 times that amount. It might surprise us. It might be some stretch we don't think is even a good linkage zone. But if the bears are using it, then that's what we should serve, is that site. If we don't have grizzly bears in Montana in 40 years, and we haven't figured out a way to connect all of the little island Forest Service mountain range areas, it's going to be a sad day to me. We don't want to see these species blink out in the lower 48 like grizzly bears, fishers, wolverines. It means we aren't doing our job caretaking for the land. We've got this beautiful network of national forests, BLM lands, federal lands. If we can just connect them up between some of these island populations, we can have a solid ecosystem of native animals in Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. The change I've been seeing the last 2 years is blowing me away. I'm really concerned that if we don't get some of these linkage zones protected and in place and get these corridor overpasses, underpasses put in, we'll miss that avenue of time. Things are changing fast and humans aren't going away. And more of them seem to be wanting to come out here to the good country, the West, and it's getting eaten up fast. My big dream is that I'll have younger people come behind me to keep doing what can be done and what needs to be done for grizzlies and everything, really.
For an all-inclusive fly fishing lodge, we've always had just this standard dumpster out here for our trash, and then for a number of years we kept having issues with bears being able to get into the trash. We tried to handle it on our own through a number of different means, and ultimately they could just get in. I reached out to Lake and a whole team of people to help us build this enclosure and take the steps necessary to keep bears out of our trash and keep our team safe and our guests safe, and as well as be stewards for the land.
We really designated a lot of areas that were hot spots for conflict, and this being such an important wildlife connectivity corridor, this was high up on the list, and then meeting a property owner who was willing to engage in the process and do, you know, the right type of solution. This is how we got here. I love the thought that if bears are thriving in an area, then the area is thriving in general, and that means for both animals and humans, healthy bears mean a healthy world.
Interstate highways, they remain the greatest barrier to grizzly migration. If grizzlies living in geographically isolated ecosystems are to reconnect, the science needed to do that is coming from a homegrown place at the Montana State University.
We try to reduce collisions with wildlife, specifically large species that are also a threat to our own safety. And we also try to provide habitat connectivity, provide them a safe passage from one side of the road to the other side of the road. Wildlife fences, they essentially have two functions. One is to keep wildlife off the road and to guide them towards underpasses and overpasses. Are we crazy to build these things? Well, if you look at the economics, we're not crazy. It is defensible, but they cost money. And some people say it costs too much money. But if you say that, then you make the assumption that there is no cost. Well, when we hit animals, we have vehicle repair costs. There's a certain probability that there will be human injuries and human fatalities. So we know for sure that there is a cost. If we build fences over long road sections, at least 3 miles, then we reduce collisions with large mammals 80 to 100%. So quite effective. We had about 22,000 successful crossings by wild mammal species, medium-sized and large-sized mammal species every year. And in the 5 years we monitored, there was over 100,000 successful crossings. It's not just about providing a crossing structure at this road section. It is about this crossing structure is at this location because further that way is another road that is mitigated in the same context, providing connectivity between a core area even further away. You do it in a much more coordinated level, on a landscape level, in this case even a national level. It is a choice that you have to make. Others have done it. There's no reason we cannot do it here other than, do we want it? That is the question. Do we want it?
I think Americans have evolved to the point where we hate wild things. We hate wild rivers, we want to dam them up. And we hate, wild animals like grizzlies and wolves and even bison. With our fish, we think that we don't need wild rivers, that we can just breed them in hatcheries and release them, and it's wrong. We need wild things, but we're afraid of them. So I think we have to get back to local thinking, because I think in the end you protect what you love. We're concerned with maybe protecting a little creek next to our town, and that's about the extent of what we can do, and we've got to get back to that kind of thinking. If all of us worldwide thought about protecting our local areas, it would change things a lot. All these things can be solved with very few people who know what the problems are and to do something about it. If you really look into all the problems that we have with the natural world, you can get depressed. But the cure for depression is action. And I tell people, don't get depressed, get angry. Do something about it.
I am the Wildlife Program Manager for the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes. We are in charge of wildlife, all the wildlife species within the reservation, which is about a 1.3 million acre area. As a tribal member from this area, it's really unique to see how tied the tribes are to the natural environment and the natural resources. So when you have a bear using the landscape and they come across unprotected garbages or livestock and chicken coops in those areas, they can't differentiate between a natural food source and an unnatural food source. When we respond to a call, we'll initially work with the landowners to really take a thorough walkthrough of their area and identify all the potential attractants that they have on their landscape, whether it's a fruit tree or unsecured chicken coops or if it's garbage. And so we'll really just work with them to help remediate that attractant and then remove it as, just a source available to the animal. Our wildlife program, does so much to help prevent conflicts because we do really want to see grizzly bears and other carnivores persist on the landscape. It's really working with landowners, working with ranchers and farmers to use tools and practices to help get around and ahead of some of that conflict, to help kill the conflict and not the carnivore.
Jackson Hole, Wyoming is responding to the perilous time of year known as hyperphagia, when bears need to fatten up before winter denning. Abrupt climate change is forcing bears to forego denning in search of the reward of municipal garbage.
A flashback to last year, there was an unprecedented amount of grizzly conflict in town. We ended up having 6 grizzlies put down. Most of the community was pretty fed up with what was happening to our bears. So I put together a petition on change.org. It ended up blowing up. It got 75,000 signatures, basically asking the county to make bear-proof trash cans mandatory. We wanted to have a bunch of these cans on the street before the bears came down for the fall and started roaming and looking for unsecured attractants. Every single one of these trash cans that's out on the street is a conflict that we're avoiding, a potential conflict. We're actively trying to get boots on the ground people out to save bears. And so much of this program has been done by volunteer work of wildlife photographers, wildlife activists, conservationists, and just people who love animals. So it's been a beautiful thing to see the community step up to the plate and actually do the work that it takes to save these incredible bears.
Me as a human approaching this trash can, I'm gonna stick my left hand under here, and there's a lever, and you push it to the right, lift up, throw your trash in, drop back down, and then it locks in place.
Farmstead Cider started in 2016. We started picking trees, and we picked, 5 trees and made 30 gallons of cider. And then one of our friends worked for the county Teton Conservation District, and they're like, guys, you may have found the solution to this pretty consistent problem that the county is having. The idea was to harvest as many trees as we could. So we focused on just sweet trees, and we harvested 70 trees. And the county's like, whoa. Conservation was like, 70 trees? Like, how many trees do you estimate there are when we did our final presentation? And we're like, well, 500, 600 trees. It became clear that this was a pervasive issue in the county. I can walk around the town of Jackson and know where every single apple tree is, or at least think I know where every single apple tree is. This year has been a banner year for apples, and so I'm walking down the street, I'm like, I've never seen that apple tree before. I've never seen that apple tree before. What? We focus largely in these neighborhoods that are of the highest frequency of bears, so we talk to the bear biologists and be like, all right, where can we take the food away? So we went in there and just cleaned it out year after year. So the bears stopped coming there. If we can just do one little thing by saving bears by drinking cider, when we don't see on the front page of the newspaper that a bear of this was euthanized or this was killed. Last year with 399 cubs coming into town and just fully causing havoc. Now people are interested in actually doing something about it. If we figure out a way to make it so it's sustainable, other communities can do this too. Like, this has to be a community-wide effort. And we're getting closer to that as time goes on. It's like, as all things, perfection is never achieved, it's only sought.
She was born in a den near Pilgrim Creek inside Grand Teton National Park in the winter of 1996. Her name, 399, was given to her by bear researchers. Because of the images captured by Tom Mengelson over 16 years, 399 and her cubs have become an inspiration to millions of us worldwide.
I've seen literally thousands of bears, grizzly bears in my lifetime.
counting ones in Alaska and Canada, and here. And there's no bear like 399 that I've ever seen or witnessed. I live here, she lives here basically, in my backyard, so to speak. For sure, 399 is the chillest grizzly I've ever seen. It's always remarkable that she's able to go through this landscape of park and millions of tourists going to Yellowstone and being here and surviving. She's magical. And she's taught her cubs to be magical too. For some reason, she started going south, and there's a lot of berries down there, and she was hanging out around, you know, suburbs and housing areas, and she got into some bird feeders and beehives. So more and more concern came around, and the Fish and Wildlife decided that they should trap and collar 399 and her cubs. Then they would have a way to follow them by GPS and see where they were, and if they got into trouble or stuff, maybe circumvent an issue. I'm not big on trapping at all, and collaring and tagging. It's just, you know, so redundant and so painful for the bears and so risky for bears that might get killed and displaced. And it was all kind of underground. When I heard about it, I drove down there quickly, and the operation was just over. But there were probably 20 official cars from the different agencies, so it was kind of like a SWAT team. But they had 5 traps set up. When she stood on the hill for a little while, sat on the hill, waiting for the cubs to catch up. She didn't realize that they were in a trap, in a covert trap. That's pretty sad, but apparently she sat on the hill waiting for them to catch up, and then she went over the hill, and she kept going. Those 3 cubs would be probably lost one way or another. It'd be in a zoo or nothing really to do with them. You can't really release them. So that really pissed me off that they had botched the fucking trapping, basically. And I'm glad 399 didn't get caught. She's been trapped so many times. But we have to instill in people that if you really want animals like bears and wolves around, we need to coexist. We need to tell others that this is important. You know, nature heals all of us.
What have we lost? If we can only imagine a grizzly bear instead of know it's there, we have lost so much, because we have lost the very thing, the very spirit that allows us to be in this place. And it is okay to have that fear of an apex predator, of something bigger and greater than us, to create humility, to make us humble. Because I believe that all of the right words and the right inspiration come from that place of openness, of vulnerability and humility. And I think the bear, for me, teaches that over and over again. I think that the biggest lesson that we can learn is reciprocity with any creature. The bear does things within the ecosystem that help an ecosystem flourish. What are we doing? What are we doing to help this ecosystem flourish? What are we doing that doesn't kill it? It's like we're standing on the edge of a branch and we're sawing it off the tree, and pretty soon we're going to have nothing left to hold on to. What do we learn from nature? That it can give back as much as it takes. We have to be this place where we're giving back now. We've taken all we can from the West, and it's starting to die.
What do we do, Dougie? Just 2 old Montana boys. What do we do to convince the people around us that bison and grizzlies should coexist with us?
You know, I think you share your own life and your own love of the animals and your experiences with them to show how vital they are to everyday life. This is what I absolutely believe, that due to climate change, our chances of survival in the grizzly bears are exactly the same. Right now, extinction should be on everybody's slate, and I know people don't want to chew on that, but that's exactly the state of the world now. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for every piece of wild, natural habitat, which has inspired my entire life, is, chasing and trying to preserve wild places and wild animals.
If the great bear is to survive, we need to find human tolerance in our western wildlands. The lives of grizzlies are in the crosshairs in the states where they are still hanging on. We need to find the courage to defend our public lands and wildlife, the courage to fight for what we love in the natural world, beginning in our own backyard.